Not only is this video 2 to 3 weeks later than I ever wanted to post something, it is also not even the same video. I mean, you can see behind me that I want to go through all these features and talk about the beta and how it works. And I can't really do any of that just yet. And we'll get to that in a second, but I want to tell everyone and show everyone that I painstakingly assembled a lot of these units. They're all functional. I haven't found a design flaw or problem in them. All of these things work. Some business logistical stuff came up. I've spent a lot of money building and putting together these units and testing them, and it's taken a lot of effort, and I've had to reach out to a lot of different people to try and get help and advice on areas of startups and electronics that I'm not particularly perfectly experienced in. It's resulted in me buying hundreds of dollars worth of regulations to check the designs, but it's also meant I've learned more about some of the regulations and some of the limitations to them. So every time I learn more, the legality of the situation gets pulled back bit by bit. So for instance, while I'm using an FCC certified module, I still have to file my product and finalize my product with the FCC to sell more than 5 units. So I have a 5-unit cap. And that tends to relate to, does any of the rest of it generate RF signals? And there is a possibility with using triacs. What's strange though is I haven't been able to find anyone to give me a definitively clear explanation about regulations for plugging into a wall. In fact, the only competitor to this doesn't seem to have any AC certifications whatsoever. No UL, no CSA, no ETL. And I could just be reading the box wrong. But it means that there is a huge liability aspect with this design. Now, in the startup world, you can do 2 things. And I've seen normally this one. You push ahead as fast as possible, feign ignorance, and deal with the repercussions later by asking for forgiveness. That's really hard for me to do. In fact, I've met people who have been told directly of things that they were, not within the law on, and they've still moved ahead with doing them. So I don't like that, and it's caused some delays because the biggest one that is preventing me from having a beta where I sell a few units is actually liability insurance. Now, some people might be asking, well, if selling them is the problem, why don't you just give them away? I can. Right now, I don't actually care about the money, but I care about one big problem. See, in consulting with startups for the last few years, I have found one thing that is overwhelming. If you give it away, you get almost no feedback. It's consistent. It doesn't matter the price point. It just matters that someone has to actually pay for it because, oh, it doesn't work. It was free. Who cares? Oh, well. And the hundreds of dollars that I spent, like these are all going to lose money for me. At any price point I put them up there at, they serve the purpose of making sure that you think you got something of value that you believe in and that you are willing to complain about. And it's that complaining and that feedback to improve it that I need. And I can get it from some reviewers, but that is a much more limited scope and audience than I would like. So in order to jump through the leap of selling any of the units, for this beta, there's also other limitations like how many you can sell into a region. So it keeps limiting things further and further and further. In order to get liability insurance in case someone's house burns down, or even someone wants to point a finger at me for saying that their house burned down because of my device, even when it wasn't its fault, which is a clear possibility, especially in the more litigious United States, I have to kind of weigh the options, and either I can do it as a sole proprietor or partnership business model, but it has unlimited liability. That means, 80 years from now, if I'm still alive, people can still be going after me, even if I have nothing to do with it as a product or a thing. If I say, no, I'm not going to make it anymore, that liability never stops. So I needed to incorporate to get, even basic things like a bunch of paperwork and a bank account in the company's name in order to get insurance. And I'm still not through that entire process yet. I'm actually incorporated now. Titan Lab Inc. is now a Canadian incorporated company, solely owned by me, but that may actually change within the next few months. But right now it means that I'm part way through the step to get the business insurance to launch the beta. So that's what's going on. For the couple, for a, I guess, future instructional thing, I'm going to explain how this actually works in its current guise. And if people want to give me feedback on that, yeah, feel free to. I'd love to hear back. Go to the Maelstrom controller website or titanlab.co. With that, let's talk about those things. So just to get a quick overview of how these things actually go together, there's a few different boards and all sorts of higher voltage wire, and it all has to be soldered together. And I was very meticulous on putting heat shrink tubing on anything that was high voltage. I don't want the possibility of anything shorting out. It's not necessary, but just a precaution, just like with the fuse in the system, it's user replaceable. So, most consumer stuff has a fuse in it, but sometimes to save costs, they're not user replaceable. It's oh, you did something wrong, the device dead. So no, this is a bit more dev. There's a lot of soldering, a very specific sequence, and then you get to snap in those ends and put in some bolts, and it's ready to go. Turns into one of these. So inside the beta boxes, there'll be a quick start guide and the controller with a pigtail and a short 1.5 foot power connector. So this is the pigtail, and so that plugs in here. The power goes in here. There's a fuse there. So it's pretty simple to get ready. You have a power in and a power out connector. So 3 buttons, 3 LEDs. So the first thing, plug the power in into the receptacle, and the power out pigtail into the other receptacle. When you plug it in, it's going to go through a little power up sequence. And you can plug in your fan and switch it to high. It will not turn on at this point because it's not receiving any power data. This top LED will flash red when it's receiving new power data. So if you have a trainer that continuously transmits, like a tax flux, it'll eventually find it and just continue to flash like this. There are 3 buttons. The top is search or change power meter. Bottom 2 are increase and decrease the wattage from your power meter at which the maximum speed will engage. So 1 green LED is 100 watts, 2 is 150, 3 200, 1 blue is 250, 2 blue is 300, and 3 is 350. So it'll be proportional through the range of 20 to whatever your chosen wattage is. In the event that your low setting is too high, if you press and hold the lower button, it'll run through the sequence going lower and lower and lower with power to the fan. It eventually loops on itself. Whatever setting is left when you remove your finger is left, but if you press again, it resets to the highest value and then works its way down again. So it'll reset to all blue and then works its way down through all green, all red. You don't want to set it too low, and same with setting it high. So try to use conservative settings, so you can set it higher and higher and higher. Most fans are okay with the default settings, but if yours is not, or you feel like your fan can put out a little bit more power or can go a little slower, you can use those 2 buttons to adjust them. Just make sure not to adjust them where the fan either stops and makes a weird noise. It has happened with only a handful. So as you can see, the red light's flashing. That means we're consistently receiving power from the, in this case, my smart trainer. And it's consistently getting new and slightly different data. If you're using a regular on-bike power meter, it's only going to flash every time you rotate the crank normally. Fan is set to its highest setting. That's what we generally want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it so, for me, I want my max fan speed at my FTP. So that's about 250, 260 watts. So when it's plugged in, so this would be 100, 150, 200, 250. So for me, that's fine. As I mentioned, there are some fan adjustments. So if we press and hold, it's going to trigger the fan into a temporary low speed mode, and you'll hear it slowly decrease. And then it cycles around again. So normally when I repress the first hold, resets it to default. Same with the high speed. And for me, I find that this is around the good setting for this fan. After a few seconds, it stops. So now we're ready to use it on the bike, and this can remain plugged in indefinitely. All right, so I'm clamped on with the lav mic. You can kind of see there onto the fan, so you can kind of get a feeling of, through the noise, the different speed of the fan. So it's set up for me. Max speed will happen when my power is 200 watts, so you can watch here. And I'll also demo quickly, it'll only be short, a quick cool down mode. So after I'm done, when it gets zero power, it enters a cool down mode that is proportional to your ride time and your ride power. So I'm going to try and keep the power kind of low for a while. You can see on the head unit, averaging about 100 watts on the 10 seconds. That's probably the closest approximation to how the fan controller works. It's averaging all of the data, so it doesn't jump up and down abruptly. Make an abrupt change in my speed rate, or my power right now, so you can hear the fan difference. stop. Fan gets slower. Now the fan cut in at half speed. Cool down mode, it's only a couple minutes riding, so only like 10 or 15 seconds of cool down. So if you're an hour, depending on your power, 5, 10-ish minutes cool down. 2 hours would then be 10 to 20, depending on your wattage. So it also means how much exertion. So if you're an FTP, if the fan is set to 250 and you're do 2 hours at 100 watts, the time is actually going to only be like 8 or 10 minutes. But if you're going for 250 watts at 2 hours, it's going to be close to 20 minutes. So, lav mic on the fan to hear it, but I can now show the AC voltage. And so you'll see it pretty proportional to my power as I pedal. So I'm going to start off fairly easily. As I change a few gears and go harder. Take it easy. Go down a little bit. So average power go down. That little squiggle there means we're AC, so the voltage is proportional. Speed up a little. Slow down. So it's easier here. Depending on how long I've pedaled for, a little bit of slow down. And it speeds up into half speed. But it's proportional to how long I've been cycling and my power output, as I mentioned.